Test. Yeah, Yes, class.
All right. Can everybody hear me? No. No? Still not. How about now? All right. Welcome. I've heard any good jokes. Plexiglass, nobody popping any balloons. I get nervous. Thank you for being here. This is, you know, is a big time in the life of our country club, and there's been a lot of work leading up to this point. We appreciate you being here, and we look forward to having you examine what this work has yielded. For those of you that don't know the background, I'm going to give you the briefest, maybe the elevator speech version. Most of you have heard it. Obviously, we're here to talk about a renovation, restoration project that this board is recommending this membership proceed with. This all started about 1.5 years ago when Chris Hartwiger, who's the head agronomist with the USGA, came here to visit. He initially was coming to look at trees. There were some concerns, and it morphed into a really all day visit where he went through the entire golf course. And this guy is a fount of knowledge. I learned so much. I came out and spent the afternoon with him along with some others. And that yielded a report that we mailed to each of you. And I hope you've had a chance to view it. If not, please do. But the high points of that yielded these observations from Chris, who was selling nothing but his time. He just was telling us it's your golf course. Here's what I see. I love your golf course. You have a great course. But I guess in my words, he was saying your golf course is tired. We went through all the aspects that matter. The irrigation system, as probably everyone here knows, is past its life expectancy. He said your tee boxes badly need to be redone. They need to be reoriented. This golf course deserves better tee boxes. Your fairways have mutated as Bermuda will do. You've got 5 varietals of grass slowly working its way back to common Bermuda. Your cart paths in a lot of areas are just completely need to be redone. Your bunkers are overdue to be reworked. Your greens have collar grass infiltration. And again, this is about 1.5 years ago. He said you've got 4 to 5 years before they're going to have to be completely redone. That process cannot be reversed. And then obviously the irrigation system. So I joked and I said, well, Chris, then other than our irrigation system, our tee box, our fairways, our cart paths, our bunkers, and our greens, we're in good shape. And he said, yeah, other than that. That night, after talking to him and hearing his observations, that this is such an asset. And again, I can't emphasize enough how much he loved, as they say, the bones of this golf course. His recommendation to us was, again, it's your course, do what you think. But I suggest you hire an architect and develop a master plan because you're in the 4th quarter of every component of this golf course. I wouldn't wait. I'd start moving. The very next board meeting, that discussion started. And I'll tell you, I'm in my 5th year on the board. Since this discussion, we have not had a board meeting that's lasted less than 2 hours. This board has been so plugged in, and obviously we're doing the other business of the club, but so plugged into the need to move forward. And that process quickly yielded a lot of names, including the name that we ended up with, Kris with a K, Spence. In fact, Chris Hartwigger, when he was going through the candidates that he thought would be really good architects for us, included the gentleman that's here. We got information from every architect around that we thought was feasible. We got to the point of interviewing only 2. We were going to interview 3, but 1 dropped out. And then when we interviewed Kris Spence, it was an obvious choice. Kris Spence has, if any of you have seen his resume, he's from the Boot Hill, Missouri. He played golf at Arkansas State. He worked with as a course superintendent. He worked with Jack Nicklaus' organization. I was telling him about playing Pinehurst number 9 the other day, and he said he got to walk that course with Jack, who designed it before it opened. For those that might not know, he designed the course that was just played by the PGA this last weekend. But his niche is Donald Ross restoration. He has been recognized by the Donald Ross Association as being an authorized architect for Donald Ross courses. Now, we're not a Donald Ross course, and he'll tell you about what he believes the lineage of this course is, but it's definitely in that mold. So he's the guy that we selected, and as recommended by him and others, we put together a cross-section committee trying to represent all aspects of the golfing community. And that plan went through that committee, and then with revisions came back to that committee, and then ultimately came to the board. The board in our last meeting approved the plan with some slight revision that you'll see tonight. In other words, revision from what was presented to us, but you're going to see that plan in detail tonight. We knew that you were anxious to see this. This has been going on for a while. You've been hearing about it. We talked about it in the annual meeting. So we decided to go ahead and pull the trigger, and it's time to unveil it, since the last step was the board approving it. We have been discussing, obviously, how to pay for this endeavor. And as I think everyone here understands, we're a 501c7. We don't operate at a profit. We cannot, through operations, pay for any project of this magnitude. So we've been discussing ways to finance it, and I've talked to everyone that can talk to me that's gone through this before, and the board has been very engaged in that process. And you're going to hear tonight about one aspect of that involves a select and limited number of people in the club coming up with a sum of 100,000, and then a tiny number that might come up with 250,000, with then some bells and whistles, use forgiveness over a period of time. You'll hear about that, in order to try to raise some of the money in the lump sum on the front end that would then lessen the burden on the rest of the membership. As part of the effort of trying to see how viable that was, it was basically a focus group. It was not intended to be an exclusive group, and limited to the group was invited to come last night. And some of you may have heard about that. It was to get feedback on whether this aspect of financing would work. And we got lots of questions, nothing decided, no votes. It was a good meeting. It was a very positive meeting. I left here at 10 o'clock, and I left people still talking last night. The point of that meeting was to try to test the viability of a limited number of members participating in a very significant way, such that the burden remaining for the other members who would be paying for the rest of it would be lessened. We were very, very encouraged by the response last night, and that effort will continue, and that opportunity to participate in those two levels of, a plan of funding that have bells and whistles that we think make it beneficial are available every much to this group as last night. Again, it was not intended to be exclusive. And if anyone is offended by not being there, please don't take it that way. So that brings us to where we are. And as we go through this, the main point that we as a board would ask that you focus on is going back to Chris Hartwigger's statement about where we are. We have definitely projects, significant projects that are ahead of us in the very near future on this golf course, not the least of which is an irrigation system that will tell you he's keeping together with Band-Aids and baling wire right now. And if you need to hear from Will, he'll be happy to describe what he's doing, and we're holding our fingers. We don't have forever. These projects individually, if we wait and address them when we absolutely have to, we've had estimates run about what that cost would be in present day dollars. And you're going to hear this, but I want to say it now so it's clear you have this in your mind while you're rolling through this. It's in the $3 to $4 million range if we do them individually, assuming in today's dollars. Now, again, you don't have the efficiency of doing everything at once and having equipment here all at once. And it's like repairing the old house, but you're still in the old house, in our view. Contrast that with what Kris Spence has put together with the input process that you'll see. We're looking at a range of $4.5 million. So as you can see, that difference or delta, as financial people like to say, is not very significant. We've also taken into account that this project, if we do it whenever we do it again tonight, all we're doing is starting the approval process of a master plan or not. It's your prerogative. Vote yes, vote no. We're not committing yet to the final, how it's going to look financially. Although again, I can tell you that that aspect of having a few members bear a significant part of the cost is looking very promising. So obviously, if you had 10 members, that's $1 million off right there. And you can do the math. All we're doing tonight is we're asking you to focus on the difference between what is ahead of us in the very near future and what we can do with a little more money and do it all at once. The estimate is it would take us 6 months. You start in March, you're playing golf by Labor Day, as opposed to the interruptions that would occur when the irrigation system fails, the interruptions that would occur when you replace the greens, and you can see the rest. So we think as a board, and this is a bunch of independent thinking folks, I'll tell you, having been president for a year and a half. Nobody's leading, everybody's thinking for themselves. This board came together and has come together resoundingly, believing this is the responsible thing for us as a membership to do. In fact, we think a board 10 years from now will look back at us and say, you guys dropped the ball. You let things just happen and let fate take hold, rather than, as Chris Hartwigger said, make a plan. So tonight we're going to present this plan to you, but I wanted you to understand the backdrop of, number one, we're not trying to cram anything down anyone's throat. I'm thrilled to see this number of people here to give this a fair look. And I would ask if you would let us get through the whole presentation, and I'll let you hear from this awesome architect. As one of the board members said after he made a presentation to the full group, we picked the right guy. He loves this golf course. And I think you're going to be really excited to see what he has to offer for us for very little more than it would cost us just to repair it as we go. So I'm going to ask if you would to hold the questions until the end, and then we're going to take any question you want to ask. And hopefully we'll have answers. Some things we still don't have answers on, but that's our process. So with that, I'm going to tell Patrick Just, who doesn't need a microphone, for those of you who know Patrick, I'm going to turn it off. And I'm going to ask him to slow down because Patrick's a hard charger. He'll take it. He's going to run through some slides to give some more background. And then we're going to turn it over to Kris Spence, who's seated at the far left over there, and let him tell you what his vision is for this golf course. So with this again, thank you for being here. And I would ask again, give the product a chance. Have an open mind and look at this and think this through. And I think you're going to like what you see. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to be pretty quick so that we can get to Kris and you all can see he's got a whole presentation. I think you'll really enjoy it. And whatever questions you have, throw them to him because he can touch all of it, whether it's design, whether it's construction, what have you. So I'm going to be really quick. Rusty touched on most of this. We had some technical difficulties. I would have been kind of pinging through these slides while he was speaking. But just to retouch on some of this really started with us saying we need to plan for our long-term infrastructure assets. This started a year and a half ago. He mentioned golf course assets. I'll just throw in there as well. On top of the golf course assets, we also have the clubhouse and other infrastructure assets that need to be planned for as well. And that all started a year and a half ago. I'm not going to repeat what he said. I will throw a couple quotes up on the board, though. You know, I mean, this is the kind of closing line from Chris Hartwigger's report. This has been emailed out to the membership. The whole report is available if you'd like to see it. But what I really like that he said is, hey, I hope this stimulates good conversations because, you know, the board and the membership has an awesome responsibility here. And look, we echo those sentiments. As you know, a member of a lot of those long 2 and 3 hour board meetings, we don't take it lightly. We don't think this is our plan. This is a plan for the club. This is a plan that ultimately this group of people is going to vote on, whether you approve or not. We hope you like it. At the end of the day, what we've worked on is making sure that we have a plan and we think it's a really good one and we're excited to present it. So we believe this not only takes care of those infrastructure assets, but it elevates the experience here. You can go ahead and we can skip through this one. This is all in the report. This is a breakdown of that $4 million that Rusty referred to. It's over $1 million when you look at the irrigation system, when you look at the greens, when you add in cart paths, bunkers, and tees and fairways, and really a minimum of $250,000 in the clubhouse, although we'll get to kind of how much we're trying to reserve for that when we get to the details of the financing proposal. It easily adds up to over $4 million. And this includes some contingencies as well. So, you know, we've looked at these numbers in a lot of different ways, and essentially, you know, there's if you did them piecemeal and you did them over time, this golf course would be under pretty much constant construction for the next 3 to 7 years, and it would cost each golfing member about $13,000. So, you know, that's not the experience that made sense to the board. If you've got all of these projects that are needed, the first question that you have to ask yourself is, do we do them one at a time, or do we do them all at the same time? And obviously, if you do them all at the same time, the disruption is less. If you do them all at the same time, there's also some economies of scale that you get from having the equipment and the crew out on site. So the cost is less when you do it that way. And then the next question you have to ask yourself, if you're doing all these projects at the same time, is what changes should be considered? Doesn't matter how much you love this golf course. If you're putting in an irrigation system, you know, if it was ideal to move that green 20 yards, you need to ask that question before you put it in. And so that was the advice of Chris Hartwigger. That's what we took, and that's the reason for the call of the architect. There was no motive. I think this board loves this golf course as much as anybody in this room, and there was no motive for change. It was more of while this process is taking place, is there anything that should be considered while you're at it? And I think the things that are considered here do exactly what we hope for, which is preserve the essence of a golden era golf course, actually return it a little bit and elevate it at the same time. So that's how we got to Kris. And he'll go over his bio in a little bit more detail. Again, we don't want to be locked into changes. We want to be considering what modifications should be made as we're going into this. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kris. I've got a little screenshot up on the page here from last weekend's Wyndham. You know, they showed Kris's name up on the board for his 2007 renovation. He has some comments about Sedgefield, and so his resume is pretty remarkable, and I think his vision for this place is very exciting. So with that, I'll turn it over. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. It's a pleasure to be here. This is sort of a home game for me in some way. Rusty touched on that a little bit. I grew up not far from here and grew up across the river in very flat ground. Just Steel, Missouri. That's where I graduated from high school there. And then I went to play golf at Ole Miss and then ended up at Arkansas State. So I played the game at a decent level. I was not good enough for Ole Miss, but I was for Arkansas State. But anyway, I enjoy the game, and I've been around a lot of clubs and been renovating, old golf courses in particular. That's where my passion lies. It's these old, what we call the golden era or classic golf course architecture. Sort of what that means is the golf course was laid on the ground. It was not built with modern machinery. This golf course was built with horses and mules and things like that. So, but I live in North Carolina, been over there about almost 40 years. So I'm used to topography, but when I think of home, I think of flat. So the first time I came to the golf course, I was just, pleasantly surprised to see the property, see the rolling nature of the property. But one of the key aspects that I think separates me a little bit is my background in agronomy. I was golf course superintendent for a number of years at some fairly high profile places. I've been around big time tournament golf, preparing golf courses, renovating golf courses. At all these golf courses, I participated in different elements of design, in-house renovation. It sort of prepared me for this career. So you can see I worked with Nicholas, and Greensburg Country Club is really where it started for me. But I was introduced to Donald Ross, not the person, his work. And even though this golf course was not designed by Ross, it was designed in the same era. So they were built similar tools, grass-based bunkers, greens that are raised in the air. But this is a partial list of what's going on in my life. The upper part is what's going on right now. This is just a list of clubs that I've worked with, mostly east of the Mississippi River. Currently working up in Pennsylvania, down to the southwest corner of Florida, throughout North Carolina. I've been working with Memphis Country Club with their old 1915 Donald Ross golf course for about 15 years. So I guided them through a restoration process that involved a lot of the things that we're going to talk about tonight, and that are some of them are hard to accept on the surface, but when you see the end result, and we'll get a couple little slide shots of that. But most of my work has been all renovation. The Coyote Club is pretty much a new golf course that I did a few years ago, but my passion really lies in working with these old golf courses. So the first thing I did when I came to the property is, I want to walk it. I want to put my feet on the ground. I want to feel what the ground feels like. I want to see the topography, the lay of the land. So I come to the club and I set foot out on the property, and I'm looking for all sorts of things. I'm looking for the strengths of the golf course, the weaknesses of the golf course. And I'm doing this independently of any of the members. I want to form an initial impression all on my own. So I started out walking across the golf course, and I was very pleasantly surprised. That I see the twist and turn of this land. I'm like, wow, this is something special. So, I'm going through the golf holes, and I walk up on a green, and I see a little green sitting there. It's known as putting surface, and there's this area that wanders off to the side or back in a corner that's in rough grass instead of green, but it's up on the field pad. I'm like, well, that used to be a hole location. That's easy for us to recapture. So, going over the hill, look at the tees are, definitely, worn out and tired, and up through the property. And I get down to 2, and, I can see little views across through the trees, but I really can't see the property because all the trees, the undergrowth. There've been a lot of pine trees, things like that planted. So those are the things that sort of catch my eye. So I do my initial walkthrough, then I want to sit down and talk with focus groups. I want to talk with the golf professional. What's going on at the club? What are the members saying? Will, what are your challenges on this golf course as the golf course superintendent? Where do you feel like? Well, he was fairly new, so he was learning the golf course, but he was really pouring his heart and soul into it, and he was discovering, irrigation issues, drainage issues here and there. off tight grass, all sorts of things going on. So we start to build this list of things, that may be wrong with the golf course. So in researching the golf course, the design pedigree of the golf course, we're looking for plans. We're looking for, old aerials. We're looking for things in the ground, remnants of the original golf course. I'm looking at the routing. And one of the conclusions I came to is this golf course was definitely designed by a professional architect. Whether it's Langford and Moreau, we can't confirm, but it bears a strong resemblance to their architecture. They were an architecture firm out of Chicago, played golf at Yale, studied C.B. McDonald, Seth Rayner, and those names may not ring a bell, but C.B. McDonald was sort of the godfather of golf architecture in America. But there are certain traits to the golf course that bear those resemblances. So where we're at, we've done those walkthroughs. We've identified, the features. We've prepared a master plan. And the bottom statement I want you to read. So it's a very comprehensive plan. It's got design elements, agronomic elements, playability. I'm thinking about every level of player when I'm developing a master plan. I'm thinking about what is it going to take this golf course and help it be successful agronomically. So just a quick run through. This is some of the aerials that are hanging on the wall down in the grill. What I look for when I'm studying an aerial, I'm looking at the bunker faces. I'm looking at the relationship of the greens. Your greens are well away from where this green is. They've retreated in, they've encroached in, we've lost those hole locations. But we can see, here on 5, a couple of eyebrow bunkers. We don't know the origin of those bunkers. We don't know the date of this aerial, but it gives us some input on the style of the original golf course. So, looking up at 4, one of the kind of neat discoveries is this, you see this little dark spot. I did not see that originally, but I said, there needs to be a bunker up on the right of 4 up there or something. So, and then I'm looking at the aerial and I see there was an old depression up there, kind of pushing the golf hole out a little bit to the left. So those are sort of nice things to find. So I'm getting in tune with the land. I'm getting in tune with the original architecture, and that's important to me. The other thing we can do in the absence of a plan of this golf course is look at a set of plans that the original architecture team that we think had a hand in it. And we look for some comparisons. When you look at the style of some of these meandering mounds and little depressions and things, they resemble a lot of the work, a little more intense at Wakanda, but very similar the way these earth forms. And those mounds and little depressions that I see on the left side of 4, between 4 and 16, and short left of 4 are very, very unique. You don't see those everywhere. And they were professionally done, very artfully done, and provide a nice quality to the golf course. So we've taken the walk through the golf course. We've had some discussions. I've studied the ground. I've looked through it. So now I start to put together a master plan. So this is basically what the master plan looks like. It's on. We have paper copies, and then we'll go through it hole by hole a little later in the presentation. So it's got, we've got bunkers, we've got depressions. Red represents existing depressions and features that exist on the golf course. There's some recommendations for some tree removal, tee additions, leveling tees, doing things. Not everything's drawn. There are some significant changes recommended on a few holes, but all in all, this is really just recapturing the potential of the golf course that's out there. And I mentioned a little bit about the greens and some of the bunkers and things, but these old school greens, the greens are up on these fill pads, and the greens should go out to the edge of it. So we have all these wonderful hole locations all out on the perimeters, and we'll touch on that a little more as we go through it. So here's a list of goals that we came up with, and I think we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We don't need to change the style of the golf course. Let's keep the quality, the great quality of that original design, and let's expand on it where we think we need to, and let's maintain as much of it as we can. So we're going to maintain the original Langford Moreau. The green complexes, we'll talk a little bit more in detail, but across the board, these greens, and this is very common where the greens have been renovated. The turf gets old and it's time to put some new grass. So you add material on top. And when you have a fill pad green that's lifted, so we've got these sides on the green. Every time we add material, it gets taller and taller. The front of the green gets steeper and steeper, and the green gets smaller. So at some point, we have no choice but to stop adding material on top of the greens. And we've got to remove all of that excess and bring the green back down, which allows us to expand it back out and then run the approach where you can bounce a ball up on the green again, as was intended. So there's little things like that we recognize through the inspection. So I just talked about smoother transitions, properly reconstruct the greens. Your last renovation was just a resurfacing, was not a rebuild. You need to get a good drainage system. We need 12 inches of root zone under the greens instead of 12, 24, and 30. That's a very difficult green to maintain. It's susceptible to changes in the weather. So we are recommending a reconstruction of the green. I mentioned reclaiming lost hole locations. I'll show a few examples of that. Restore the definition of the contours. You got some great greens out there, a few that are problems, and a few steep spots, but it's a beautiful set of greens that with rolling nature and some of these spines and things that work in through the putting surface. I really like them and I want to maintain them. But over time, they sort of get watered down and the water doesn't travel off the greens like it should. So we would take care of all that during that process. Surface features, rebuilt bunkers, new drainage, both in and out, new grass around the bunkers. We are recommending a few added bunkers, remove a few bunkers, increase the width of the fairways to get out and interact with those mounds and swells and things like that on the outer edges. Use some of the sand that's generated in the project, firm up the approaches, regrass fairways. So you can see there's a lot of layers to a project like this that to get us to where we need to be. Tee boxes here, full scale, they're shot. It's time for new tees without a question. Modern irrigation system, no question about it. It's time. It's only going to get worse going forward. So the last thing on the list is tree removal, pruning, things like that. Most controversial thing I do is remove trees off of a golf course. I love trees as much as anybody else, but as has been done by a lot of clubs, there's been some overplanting, a lot of the pine trees, and I'm going to show you what's detrimental about those pine trees. And not only do they shade the fairway, but they're blocking out some beautiful specimen oak trees that are on this property that are really an asset that you're not getting to enjoy. So this is just a little crude drawing I've done, but this is down at 2. And this is just a great example, one of the more dramatic examples where the green's kind of back at the edge and then it leaves the edge of the fill pad. And we've got all this putting surface that's been lost. We've got an entire hole location, up on the front right. And that repeats itself multiple times throughout the golf course. Well, the beauty of these hole locations, they're your most strategic and interesting. So when you want to sort of turn the heat up on the golf course a little bit, put the pins over in those corners and the golf course comes alive. Now it's important to play down the edges of a golf hole to get back into that corner. So we want to recapture that. No matter what you do, we're not redesigning the green. We're just going out and recapturing what once was on this property and recapturing some of that strategy. The other thing we discovered, off-type Bermudas throughout the greens, where that comes from, whether it's the grass that was purchased or just remnants that survived the process. But we've got some off-types, and that will only get worse. They'll continue to spread and impact putting over time. So you're definitely ready to look at regrassing the greens. So Will and I, we can't see under the surface, so we needed to do some testing. We needed to go down, do some core samples, and so we reached out to Istrix, got some information to do some core samples. We sampled a couple of greens to see what was going on with the greens. these greens, even though they're playable, they're not really performing to the level that they should for you as a club. So we did some testing, and this is the summary of what we found. But you can see they tested in 4-inch depths going down. So we can see how light the sand is down. It's down 12, 16 inches going all the way up to the putting surface. See how much darker that is? That's organic matter thatch. In addition, we discovered there's a lot of fine sand in that top 4 inches. That didn't occur in the last year or two. That's occurred over time of using very fine top dressing sand, fine particles, very small particles, and it plugs up the green. It shuts down the water permeability, the porosity, the air, and it just gradually weakens the green over and over. So when you get into a winter event or a cooler event with a lot of rain, the greens are going to suffer, but they're never going to perform up to your standards. So we can see these are some of the results, mostly in the top 4 inches, organic thatch, excess of fines. The greens are sealed off in the top 4 inches. They're susceptible to disease and high rain moisture events. And the greens have a varying depth of root zone. They really don't go down and go into a drainage system properly. And then I'll talk to you about there's too much on the greens. So the process, this is the layers of the process. So in some of the greens are a little bit different. We would strip all the turf off. We're going to remove the excess. We're going to get the green back down to its original elevation. Then we would core that green out. And the bottom of the green needs to match the surface of the green. So all those contours, we don't want to build a flat bottom and then build contours. Then we would have inconsistent mix depth. We want to core it out evenly, follow the contours. Then we would put drainage in the bottom, a blended USGA root zone over the top of that drainage system. It would herringbone system connected to a discharge pipe out of the green. So when we get extra rain or excessive rain like today, water goes through the green, hits the system, out the pipe, pulls in fresh air. We have a vibrant turf plant. So we got original contours, then we're looking for things that are excessive where we want hole location. We're looking for 1.5 to 3% slope in our pinnable areas. We're going to go above that to try to keep from going below that. We like to maintain 1 to 1.5%. I prefer 1.5 to keep the surface water off of those greens. So what would happen, we've not only do we do the top of the green, we do the shoulders of the greens, all that would get new sod around the sides of the green, and then we would sprig the top of the green with Tiff Eagle. Now, you currently got Champion. Tiff Eagle is an ultra dwarf. It's the DNA of Tiff Eagle has been radiated, and I don't know all the details of it, but it stabilizes that DNA. Excuse me. But it stabilizes so it doesn't mutate, and we don't end up with the off types. I planted a set of Tiff Eagle greens in Naples, Florida over 20 years ago. They're still there today, which is rare in Florida, and there's no mutation in them. And you can't say that about a single set of Champion greens in the country. And Champion's a great grass, but it just has a tendency to mutate and start to change its DNA a little bit. So Tiff Eagle is the grass we'd be looking to plant on the golf course. So from the greens, we go to the next priority, bunkers. So this is the bunker on 16. Some of you may not know it's there. I don't know. It's kind of hidden down behind a big oak tree. Very, very prominent, probably the deepest bunker on the golf course. If you've been there, you remember it. But so this is what we start with. With the bunker renovation. The bunkers are tired, the sand's contaminated, the drainage is slowing down, starting to hold water and things like that. They're not consistent throughout the property. So that's what we would look at is, so we go through the process, bunker renovation process. We take the sand out. Let's just go ahead and jump to that next slide. Now, I like these visuals. So here's an existing, but I think this is on 10. I'm not sure. But you can see there's a little sloughing off right up here. And I don't know if you can see that. Got a little sand migrating. It's, the sand is freshly raked, so it's in pretty good shape. But the process is we take the sand out, we take all the sod off the face. So this is up at the Cockwell Club where I'm working in Erie, Pennsylvania right now. Very similar bunker. It's a big grass face, flat bottom. So you can see we've taken all the sod off. And behind this, the bottom, the toe of the slope of the bunker was out here. And there was sand built up, these big wedges of sand. And you'll see that how this is, you see how there's a little shoulder there and it kind of tapers out. That one's pretty steep, but the sand will build up under the sod. So we go back and we go back into that and remove it all and reset the edge of the bunker. So once we've got it where we want it, we install drainage, new sod around it. Now this is a bunker that has capillary concrete in it. They're starting to put the sand in it. So this is the process. So clean it out, shape it up, drainage, whether we put a liner system in or not. Flat bottom bunkers don't need liners, but it is really becoming popular. It is a significant investment. It's a $3.5 square foot investment, but it adds a lot of longevity to your bunkers. But that's something we're seeing a lot of, but you can kind of see the process. So we're heading toward an end result of, a fresh face, nice clean edge, new sand in, flashed up. This is Sarah Bay. This is a Donald Ross down in Sarasota, Florida. I've worked on for the last, 5-6 years. But that's kind of the end product we're looking for. We take you through with the bunkers. Going to tees. I really don't need to say much about this tee. It's on 5. This first day I walked out on the golf course, it's just seen better days. It's compacted, the soil, the grass is sort of retreated back. Winter's having its way with the tee. So we jump over. This is Memphis Country Club. Their tees used to look just like that. So the difference is being this tee has a 4-inch root zone beneath it. It's laser leveled. It's aligned to the fairway. And that's Xeon Zoysia. And that's what we're proposing here, to create this sort of tee. We're going to see this in a little bit greener condition, I think, in a minute. So the other thing I've mentioned a little bit about is fairway turfs. It was I think Rusty talked about it. This is from this spring. We see all the different kind of grasses, how they react differently to the winter and the conditions, and you have a very slow transition. Grass varieties are just like technology. They've advanced a long way. They've bred new elements to them to help them withstand winter better, quicker spring green up. But one of the grasses in particular, this is the Coyote Club that we've stumbled on, is Tiff Tuff. And Tiff Tuff it's not the most dense hybrid, but it's very, very durable. It recovers very quickly. It holds its surface, uses 38% less water than a lot of the other grasses. So as we go forward environmentally, it's a good choice, and it's been a great performer. But that's about 4-year-old Tiff Tuff right there. But you can see how consistent. And now at Coyote Club, I don't have any rough, and it just kind of bleeds out onto the sand. So this, that's probably 80, 90 feet there, spreading out to 150, 60 as it goes down through the trees. But we don't have any rough out in the trees. It's sort of a design element. But this is the grass we're thinking would be a really good match for this area and for this property. Foundation of everything we do is irrigation. Got to get a new irrigation system. We don't have it designed yet. I just used a comparison on some of our other projects, saying to just get a head count and help us base some elements. But the new system would have single head control. So every single head can be run at its own time. Right now you have heads that are paired up that run together, whether they're on high ground and low ground together. So it kind of forces overwater, underwater. We have only 4 heads or 5 heads around the greens, so we have to water the green and the surrounds together. We want to separate that part circle around the greens. Head count to be determined. The new systems are 2-wire, where it's technology. Each head has its own IP address, so to speak. So superintendent can really control that. HDPE fusion weld system, get away from PVC. We vibratory plow that in. Long-lasting system, much much longer, much more durable system. Want to add to it, whatever, it's easy to do. Okay, going to trees. So back to my comment about the controversial nature of removing trees. Rusty asked me to show a couple of great examples of where I've done this, and I think it's pretty impactful. This is Carolina Golf Club in Charlotte, North Carolina. This is when I started with them. They planted pine trees around pretty much all the golf holes, the greens, little ornamentals. As you know, you've done the same, just like pretty much every club is, tried to beautify, and they plug up the rough. And what we don't like about that is it blocks the view. It shuts down recovery play. It hides the beautiful trees. So this is the finished product standing out prominently. This green is standing out in the middle of this panoramic open space after we remove these trees, and it's incredible. This is zoomed in a little bit. This is a 237-yard par 3, the third hole. Original Donald Ross golf hole. All the bunkers have been removed. I've restored the bunkers. That green is one of the larger greens on the golf course, but when we removed the trees and exposed it to this big, vast opening, it looks like a little thimble sitting out there, and you're standing there at 230 yards, if you're back, but it plays up to about 150 for some of the shorter tees. But it's when we excavated the green, that green was an Indian barrel. There were some artifacts and things in there. So it was just a natural knob that Donald Ross just stuck the green on. It's kind of a neat find for us, but just really one of the most spectacular holes. But now you can see how we can see all the way across. That's the 7th green in the 15 back left, 7 green off in the far distance. You can see every green and flag on this golf course from the clubhouse area. So back to Memphis, same topic, just real quickly. So there's some of the laser graded Zorja tees. This is one of the first things we did there. And I was really pushing the club to get rid of some of these crepe myrtles and open this golf course up a little bit. You can see the bunkers are tucked back. But right back in here, look at this beautiful specimen tree right here that we couldn't see because of all the clutter. And that's one of the things I think could be really a benefit to some of the tree removal here. But look back in these trees, find the clusters of trees, find these really true specimens down through here, clean out the clutter, let the golfer experience those kind of features of the golf course. So let's run through the hole-by-hole recommendations real quick. We'll start down the golf course. I'm just going to walk you through it, and you'll see that most of it is sort of tweaking the golf course a little bit. Some of it's just, I think, just moving things around to take better advantage of the land. Some of it's just moving into a little better sunlight, things like that. But we're really not redesigning this golf course, especially in the case of the first hole. So move the tees out away from, we've got some river birch in here that are shading. We've got some poor turf in here. Just slide the tees over to the left. And one of the things when I was walking the golf course, several of the ladies stopped me and said, can you make this just a little bit shorter in some places? We can't get here and there. So I listened to that, and a few of the senior men and different players, and I watched players, across the spectrum, where you're hitting the ball, where you're playing into some of the greens from. So I'm taking notes through the whole process. So all we're looking at on one, take the bunker out on the left, on the high side of the hole, span the fairway over, move it over to the right, cut it into the upslope of the hill. So we're just moving it over. Now, if you're in that bunker, then I've helped you out. I probably saved you from a worse fate of going on down the hill and off to the right down into the creek area there. So, but that to me is the natural location for that bunker. And then one of the members came up after last night's presentation, said, the bunker used to be over there. So it made me kind of feel good. But green stays where it's at. Take off the left lobe of the green, take this bunker out, a little bit of shortcut around the front left, reduce that bunker, bring a little bunker around the front, create a great new front right hole location. So if you play away from the bunker, you can access that whole location. Go down the right side, you got to go over the bunker. That's just a little strategy of kind of way it will take you to the golf course. Number 2 is fairly simple. Enlarge level tees. It's expand, some of the forward tees. We're coming up. We've got a little bit of, pine tree recommendations here. But look at it. We mentioned a little bit about some hole locations that we can recapture, on these sides. The bunkers stay in the same location. So we're really not changing to. We're just recapturing its potential. Third hole, first of several par 3s on this golf course that force you to carry the ball all the way to the green. There's no way on it unless you get there through the air. And I'm going to show you, we can change that a little bit both here. We're not going to eliminate it completely, but when we lower this green, raise the approach a little bit, ease that transition up onto the putting surface, recapture the edges, we can make it a much more playable hole for the everyday player. So we're not doing much here, much larger tee across the cart path here, much more flexibility and use of the tee there. Rebuild the bunker on the left side. We've got it. 1 to 4. Now we're turning. We're going to make a fairly significant increase in yardage. So new tee back here. It's kind of off the screen a little bit. 456 yards. So this is a big boy. This is for the guys that are going back. You're going uphill up to the top of the ridge. I mentioned a little earlier, we're going to put a bunker back in over here, up on the top of the hill. So that what that will do is push the golf ball left. We'll expand fairway left. So we've got what is virtually pretty much a straight golf hole with just a little bit of bend. Now we're going to make it move laterally across the landscape. It's going to work away from the bunker over near the mounds, back away from those mounds to the right, and then back into the green. And that creates angles and just creates a lot of value. So we're bringing these features that are completely off the golf hole now will be brought back into play, and we're not moving them anywhere. We're just moving the hole over to them. So going up to the green, you've got a bunker that's hidden from view today, right in here. I want to flip it over, put it into your view so you can see it from the fairway. That bunker will look like it's right against the green. That's a great element that the old architects used a lot. Donald Ross was a master at it. Be out there 10, 15, 20 yards, pins behind it, and to your eye, it looks like the pin is right behind that bunker, and there's a gap there. And you'll end up leaving the ball in that little area right there from time to time and thank me for it. But we'll mow that a little shorter for you, expand some shortcut. We want to do that around the golf course, create a little more variety. But so the other elements of this hole is take out the little pot bunker. I think I've got that little tree there. It's a holly or something. There's a lot of dirt on it. Get that out of the way. Expand some shortcut. Put a bunker back right. Expand that bunker a little bit. Capture some of those shots coming over from 15. But great green. This is one of my favorite greens on the golf course. The way it folds in and rolls and kind of runs back into the corners. It's got some neat qualities to it. Fifth hole, turning back in a different direction. Now, I'll mention real quickly, this golf course twists and turns back and forth as good as any I've ever seen. A lot of routings will sort of work their way, and then they'll come back. Firestone North is an example, north-south, north-south. This golf course twists and turns and goes in every direction, as you know, especially on a windy day. It's from your right, it's from your left, it's behind you, it's into you. I mean, what great variety. But so we've come up, and now we're going to turn up and go down the edge of the property. We're going to add a tee back. We're about 520. Trying to get those par 5s a little bit longer, over 500 if we can. So this tee, it's off the screen a little bit, but it combines with the back of 16 like that. The rest of the tees just need to be enlarged and leveled. Fairway pretty much stays the same, little expansion, but I want to get a little further left and help this bite into the fairway a little bit more. This is an existing feature. It's sort of off to the side now. It bites in a little bit right there, but expand the fairway on both sides of it. And then this is where I really try to elevate the mindset on that second shot. As I see it, you've hit a good tee ball, you're just full throttle at the green. You don't have anything to think about. Just hit it, try to hit it straight, hit it hard, get it up there on the green or as close to the green. So I'm going to throw you a couple of equations. A little center line bunker, little mound behind it, add a new mound right there. We've got one tree that needs to come out. Green expansion, bring the bunker on out around the approach and make that golf hole and that approach go in there and split and then work in and just curve back into the corners. So depending on where the hole location is, this hole can really come alive and make you think about that second shot, whether you're laying up short of the little pot bunker, you're going to take it on, try to land on the other side and have it kick forward. You'll lay up left or right. So it's a lot to think about. And I can tell you, if I ever get you as a player reaching over to your bag and you touch more than one club, I've got your attention. That's important. So great little hole. 6, turning back in the opposite direction. Now 6 is a green that we think, it's been changed. It's a little bit out of character with the rest of the golf course. So we want to reverse that. And as you've got a tee shot, a blind tee shot here. So we want to combine some tees, get a little bit of tee space, kind of a general theme, take instead of this cart path crossing, we bring it around the right side and enter back. But we've got 2 mounds, existing landform features that guide you over the blind spot. I'd like to add 2 more, remove these trees and make that golf hole go around the first 2 and then back inside and give you a little more reference of your target line. You're probably using the trees as your right boundary now. And I'd like to transition that over to what was originally there, which was much further out, which was this mound. So with the modern game, we just slide it inside the path. Fairway moves around it, and then we come up to the green. Now the pond was not original, very much needed for irrigation source, but I think we've got a missed opportunity not coming over. This is the top of the slope. Move that green up, take the bunker out, move that green over, and create really nice hole locations all the way down the left side. So when we want to turn up the strategy, turn up the intimidation, or the player's attention in approaching this green, just slide those hole locations over near the lake. And I don't know of any player that doesn't pay attention when the hole location gets a little closer to the water. So we've got this nice asset here that we're really separating the green from with these little pot bunkers. So we enlarge the bunker, expand a little shortcut out behind it, lower the green down a little bit and soften it. So we get away from that really big tier in it. That's sort of out of character for the rest of the golf course. Number 7, and this is where I start. There's a 3-hole set here where I do some things that not so much on 7, but where I move something off of its current footprint. So one of the things I noticed about 7 is obviously the first time I see it, I just see the blind hill. It doesn't give me any direction. 6 gives me some direction with the mound. There's no direction on 7. It's just trees on the right, some trees off in the distance. And I really like to give the player a little bit of guidance coming over the hill. So I'm recommending we add a few mounds up on the brow of the hill. So you would come over the left side, and these would just gain in height. But in addition, this is the left-hand bunker. That's the center of the proposed fairway. To the left, when I got down in the fairway, and you got a row of pines, and I see these oak trees, and I see this understory up on the hill in this elevation, and I'm thinking, what a beautiful hill that is. I can't see it because of all these pine trees. But if we took these pine trees out and slid the fairway over and let the hole play along the base of that ridge, we bring that into view. It's just a beautiful, beautiful area of the golf course to see on both sides, removing some of those pines. So in order to do that, we need to kind of create a scenario where you need to play over there, that you can look, the green aims over there. It comes straight in. And I sit and watch some of the young guys, and they're hitting the ball down in here. They're just driving it at the green. So we want to defend that line. You'll see me reference it as the direct line from tee to green. So I'll put obstacles between them and the green. If they want to take the short route, they're going to take on some trouble. So we set up a set of, these are the 2 existing bunkers. There's an existing bunker, just slide it over, add another, little bit of mounding right in there, and they'll run off at a diagonal So you can play, to shorten the hole, you got to play right up near the bunkers. To get the best angle, you play the long way home, go down the left side. But a great little green, little subtle green. Don't see any need in changing that green whatsoever. There's a little contours in there that just a little small target, well raised. Threw a little comment down here at the bottom. You know, if you knock it over that green, I'm not a big fan of the little bunker back there saving somebody from what they deserve. That's kind of mean of me to say that, but it's so just a little shift to the fairway. The ground's there. We don't have to bulldoze. We don't have to change the ground. It's there. We just go out there and use it. So now we get to the big moment of the night. So I've been walking across this property for 7 holes, and I'm in love with this property. I'm in love with the contours and the elevation. I go across the bridge, and I look up 8, and I'm on this just dead flat spot in the corner, and I'm kind of like, what happened? I almost felt like I left that golf course for a little spot, but I could see it went on up the hill, and so I go on up the hill, and I come back down the hill. I go up the hill, and I come back down the hill, and I feel like the golf hole is not consistent with the rest of the golf course. I think it's a shame that they had to use that little floodplain area that's so flat. But so I go up the hole, and there's nothing really up 8 that catches my attention in a positive way. And I go over the hill, and I see 9. I see another par 3 with a abrupt front, forced carry, go back over. I'm back and forth trying to figure this out. And go all the way back across the bridge. I looked through the trees. I was fortunate it was during when the leaves were off. I'm like, well, asked Will, I said, who owns the property? Who owns that property over there? Well, the club does. And I'm trying to figure out a way to fix this, this, what I think, is a weak moment in the golf course. I'm like, well, let's put a par 3 here, and then let's see what it will yield as we go up over the hill for number 9. So this is the par 3 that I came up with. So we're coming off a 7 green down here. Here's the cart path going across the bridge. We would build this up in elevation, so this would be a slightly downhill shot. But instead of having a real abrupt slope onto the green, this fairway would just run right out across the green, just sort of undulate and just kind of wrinkle right through there. So it would be a par 3 that gives us an opportunity to bounce the ball. You can land it 20 yards short of the green, and if you've got enough pace on it, you can bounce it on the green, so you don't have to hit it all the way on. Instead of having 3 out of 4 like that, then we can add another opportunity to bounce the ball. So we build a series of tees. So these are current 8 tees. 8 is going off. That's 8 fairway right there today. You can see it going off to our right. So we would hit off short and left. All of these trees would be cut back. Then you would go up, play the hole, turn around, then you're coming over to the new 9th hole. So what does this mean for number 9? This is where, in my opinion, it really gets good, and we take maybe one of the weakest spots in the golf course and turn it into one of the strongest of the whole property. So here you see 8. Slide the tees over. We do some tree removal. You're over near the creek. This is all the new tees. 610 yard, par 5. Going up the hill, double dog leg, climbing in elevation from the back tees. We're about 415 up here, 510, 525, but we need a good legitimate par 5 on the golf course. This golf course can be reached in 2, and you don't have to hit it 610 yards to get there. From the top of this hill is going to be a pretty significant slope that you'll learn to use and run the ball toward the green if you've hit a good tee shot. So some of those things are little elements of a golf hole like this. But so here's existing 8 green. So coming off the tee, I'll just take you up through the hole. So coming off the tee, we're going to put a big bunker with some little islands, grassy islands in it to turn the golf hole, bend it around the corner, push the player a little bit away. We're going to raise this up a little bit, so we're climbing gradually. So this is, the big hitters are going to try to get here. Most of the players are going to be back in here. you're going to have the option. There's going to be that tree. There's a tree we're sitting right there that will remain. If we can keep it alive, I want it to stand right there. And then there'll be an expansive fairway that's going up and over the hill, and that's going to be your target. Unless you want to try to go to the right of the tree, shorten the hole, go over the hill. You'll see the pin from this area. You'll be able to see the pin just over the top of the hill. We're gonna cut a little bit of a swell to the right, so the hill fairway will go up to the left, lean down past the tree to the right. For those brave enough, they can just take it straight at that flag, sort of feed the, feed it up through the gauntlet right here, and have a chance to run the ball on the green and reach a 610-yard par 5 and 2. That's a pretty exciting thing, and you'll remember that. Or you can lay up here and have a very dramatic downhill shot to the green. Clubhouse will be directly in your backdrop. With some tree removal, be looking right up at the back of the clubhouse. And I said, this is really coming together. We can sit at the clubhouse, have drinks, watch guys train wreck down here on 9. Try to do all sorts of things with this crazy golf hole Kris Spence has designed, but I've done a couple of holes that sort of are in this flavor that people thought were a little bit kind of out there, and they all became the favorite golf hole on the golf course. But we're going to follow the lane. It's going to be a classic golf hole. It's got a lot of potential, multiple ways of playing it. Every player can pick and choose a different way of playing this golf hole, and that's the sign of a great golf hole. So that's, I think this is really something to strongly to consider. So what else do we get for that little change on 8 and 9? So what do I do with 9 green? So I've moved 9 green out. It's down about where, just kind of beyond where the ladies' tee is today. So 9 green, the existing 9 green is going to be up the hill behind that. So this is 9 green right here. Little approach fairway, the little slope right there, the front of the green. This is your putting green, chipping green. So we're really looking at all the practice areas, but we take this area and we shape it into a much more usable space. This would be the new short game complex, which I think you need. You need an area to where multiple players can spread out and hit wedge shots, gap wedges, things like that, to a green with enough distance variety. And this would be a really nice amenity to add to the offering here at the club. So what do we do with the putting green? We slide it over just above the cart barn. We've got space there, unused space. Have a dedicated putting green right outside the clubhouse back door. So you can transition from practice, hit a few chips, little pitches, roll a few, go to the tee. Cart stays in the same direction the whole time coming back. Got great flow. I think it just makes better use of the whole property. In order to put the putting green there, we slide 10 tees over a little bit to the left. All we're proposing out on the range at this time is maybe a little bit of drainage work here. We've talked about extending it down a little bit. We're not that far yet, but do some target greens, put some zoysia tops, a very realistic target. Looks like one of the greens on the golf course. So you're actually hitting something, seeing the ball hit and land and try to stop it on those target greens. So we're getting a lot of value, more than just 8 and 9. We're getting short game. We're getting improved putting green. So there's a lot of value that comes through that 8-9 switch. 10, by far the most talked about hole, bar none, wherever I travel. And I mentioned that I'm working for Jackson Country Club. It just so happens I was working down at Dunedin, Florida, for a gentleman named Kevin Janica, played golf for the Balls. Used to be a member here. And I mentioned that I was, I'd been retained by the club. He said, what are you going to do that 10th hole? That's the hardest damn hole I've ever played in my life. And he's a scratch player. And then I bump into a guy in Charlotte. What are you going to do with that 10th hole? I hadn't figured out how to play the 10th hole. So I knew I had a little bit of a problem child, but it's got some history. We want to retain and protect that history. The comments about Hogan and, how difficult it is. But I want to make it easier. I want to make it more playable. So it's fairly simple what I'm recommending. Slide the tees left, add another tee, help the ladies get on down a little closer to the end, have a chance to get there in regulation. Widen this fairway on both sides, clear out some of the underbrush, and push this cart path left, push that fairway, let that fairway curl up and react with the hill instead of just going in and then the rough turning up. Let that fairway flow up so you can hit the ball down in that corner and it'll turn back into the golf hole. So the abrupt change in the fairway where it drops, we would take some of that dirt, cut it down, push it into the bottom, raise the bottom up and let that golf hole just sort of trundle down the hill and bottom out. We'd have better drainage, better playability, wider landing area. Still going to be a very difficult golf hole. So we turn up, do a little work in the approach. And this is, I didn't mention this a lot, but earlier, but over and over and over on this golf course due to the greens being raised, there's little dips in front of the greens that prevent a lot of balls that should make the green, stops them short. We want to even those out, make those flow a little better where you do have a better chance. But this is a really egregious one here because it's such a long hole. And there's a lot of you are landing short of that green. It needs to feed on, so we would fill that in. Green stays in the same place, enlarge the bunker a little bit on the left. We still got that once, that same great 10th hole, but it's got a little better playability. 11th hole, back to the big par threes up in the air. Line the tee, enlarge the tee, add a tee here, raise the approach, lower the green, lower this left side, add hole locations all over here that have been lost. There's a couple little mounds and things along the back edge just need to be softened. Same golf hole. Pretty simple process here, just recapturing what's been lost. And here we go again. Now we're turning back in the other direction, going back up over the ridge. Simple process on the tees, add a tee up the hill, widen it out a little bit here on the right. We've got a row of pines that have been added here, just take those out. One of the things I noticed this spring, there was a lot of damage, especially on the left side of this golf hole from even not only pines, but some of these oaks. You can see there's multiple rows of oaks in here. I think we could afford to take out the inside row of oaks and get better sunlight and have better success. Even with the new turf, we need to think about doing that. But 12 green is, again, there's something about greens that have sort of a little bit of a scalloped and saddled nature to them that just really appeal to me. And when I saw this green and it, the way you can putt and the ball can kind of work back, but we need to expand the green out so all of those scallops impact the edge of the green and feed into the green. And it's fairly subtle, it's 6 to 8 feet. This is pretty significant right here. But you can use that to feed it in, but if you miss it, then you've got a very difficult chip. But I love this green. There's no need to change the screen at all. The only thing I'm recommending here is take this bunker, run it up the right side of the green, and give a little more protection. There's so much close proximity right there on the right. But this is one of the areas at 2 and 12 that when I walked down into it, I thought it was a shame I couldn't see, beyond these golf holes, the underbrushing, the overgrowth, and that's, just occurred over time. Will and I have been talking about some solutions to go ahead and get some of that done and try to start cleaning those areas up. But we want the vistas to extend well beyond these greens. We don't want them to go down in that little confined pocket like that. So anyway, didn't mean to get that piece of ice, but green stays the same little great little green. So 13 is a hole where it's best set of tees on the property. The dirt that was moved out the pond, those are fairly new tees. No recommendations on the tees, just leave them there. Coming up to the green, put sand back in the little pot bunkers. I understand it had sand in it at one time. I think sand should be in it. Take this little bunker out, kind of cut the pond a little closer to the green. Take out a row of pines here. Got some beautiful oaks in here. There'll be a little bit of work done right here so we can see that water hazard from the tee. I want you to be able to see the lake a little bit. The green is good green. It's out to the edges in pretty good shape. So not a lot of work to do on the green there. So here we go again. Now we're turning in another direction. Back up across the hill. 14's the kind of hole that to me is, so I've been fighting a little bit of a sinus infection, but we don't really want to mess with a hole like this too much. We don't want to try to overdo it. It's a little bit of a blind tee shot. So we just combine the tees, expand the tees, fix some tees, take out some pine trees right and left, increase the width. But look at the lost surface area on this green. Look at that great hole location. Thank you, Preston. Don't take water break. So, you know, this hole is intact. Got 2 bunkers left and right, but we've lost a lot of great hole locations. Front hole locations are gone. The greens retreated off of those areas. Back right, it's a completely different golf hole. You know, if we can go back there and capture that. So it's just simple. The architects were restrained. They used the lay of the land. They just followed the lay of the land, put a little green at the end. It's a little bit of a breather spot, but you know, looking at the contouring going into that green, it's very interesting. If you miss that fairway and you have to play up through the approach of that green, there's a lot to think about going up through there. So it really appealed to me. So jumping over to 15. So here we are on another short par 5. We need to again think about the interest of this par 5 as we get through the first shot. So combine the tees, move a tee up, 410 option. You planted trees in here trying to defend the inside turn of the golf hole. I would recommend we go with bunkers there. So we're going to cut in the direct line. The guys that are trying to cut the corner, they're going to have to, they could carry the bunker. We're probably, I don't know, probably 295 out, 300 to the tip, 285 to in there. But if you want to shorten the hole, you got to take on those bunkers. That's strategic golf. Challenge the edge of the bunker, skirt it just to the left, you shorten the hole the maximum amount. You have the option of playing well out to the left. Take them out of the play. If you're not going there in 2, just play out to the wide side of the fairway. Get on out here. Then now you're laying up. You're looking for the hole location. If it's over here, you might want to lay up on this side. If it's back in the corner, you want to take on the little hummock mound complex or try to go over them, stay up short, all sorts of options. Again, same thing as 5. I'm really trying to make the player think about what they're doing on that second shot. If you get aggressive and you go in there in 2 and you pull off the shot, you're going to remember it. It's going to be a great experience for you. So just to describe this green, we are going to spice this green up a little bit. We think it's I think it's a little bit out of character, but with the rest of the golf course and kind of tame it down. But this is a little bit of a depression that meanders up through the green. It splits the green. They build high pin placements all along the left, little gully, and hole locations all over on the right. This is a common feature that a lot of the classic architects used. Then we go back to a little terrace in the back right. Little high plateau, falls off sharply all around. So that's our Sunday placement. Add a bunker over on the right, just to kind of contain shots running off toward 5. Move the cart path over to the left, trying to clean up this area in between. This is an old bunker or an old depression. I'm going to convert it into a little bit of a mound. It seems to hold water most of the time, but put some dirt in that and make it perform a little better. So we worked our way out to 16. I've talked about this golf course zigzagging back and forth. And these architects, one of the neatest things they did, they turn you and you're coming all the way home. I don't know how often you do that into the wind, but that could be a pretty good chore for these next 3 holes to come home, you know, facing the wind. Is that going north, east? So with 16, so we come off of 15. We've combined the tees I mentioned earlier. We stretched it out to 435. I'd like to see the hole play away from the boundary a little bit. So we're using the existing features. These trees would come out and we would sort of litter the area between the 2 golf holes with the mounding and the undulations and the landforms consistent with everything else on the golf course. Then put another little more significant nest of landforms down that right side that would push the tee shot away from the boundary in the street. Move the forward tee up a little closer there. This is a tough hole for anybody, especially the shorter players. So slide it up there, put a little mounds, kind of disguise it. So it just looks like it's part of these mounds. Green stays in the same location, bunker in the same location. Remove the big oak.
Thank you.
Great golf hole. This is, I mean, if you don't know what's behind it, it's not very intimidating, but you all know what's behind it and, you know, the fall off. But this is a clear indication. This is one of the strongest indications of Langford having some influence over the golf course. So great golf hole. I really like it a lot. So going to 17, add a tee back in the back. We cut it down in the hill. There's a power line that cuts across, trying to bring the hill back into play. Just renovating these tees, a little slide forward. Add a bunker at the top of the hill. You guys that are trying to cut the corner, we're going to give you a little challenge up at the top. This fairway has been reshaped and cut down. And I really think they did a nice job with it. It's got beautiful undulations on the sides, and it sort of works up over the hill, bends over to the right. And then you start that descent down to the bottom of the hill. We've got some trees in here that need to come out. We need better turf down in here. We don't want to open that up and have it be a free giveaway. So we would put a little depression, a couple little mounds. We're going to have to maintain these trees for protection. So we're coming down to the bottom of the hill. This green, a lot of this green over here is not visible to the player unless it is well out to the right. So we take some of that out, put a bunker in there, slide, open the approach up a little bit. I like to entice and encourage players to take on a shot of that magnitude off a little downslope, trying to hit that green. So I'm going to slide that bunker a little bit to the left, and I'm going to give you an opportunity to try to entice you to go over the creek and try to go for that green a little bit. Usually you'll end up in more trouble than you intended, but a couple of bunkers. We've got a bunker there today. We keep one there, add one here, and just reorient the green a little bit left or right with just a little step cut in it, you know, climbing up the hill. Neat hole. I know that the original hole was here. You know, it was linked into a par 5, and we'll stay with the par 5 at this time for this golf hole. So now we're on the final hole, getting ready to come home. We've got an opportunity. There's a right of way here. We can put the tee box a little bit further back, bring the top of the hill a little more into play. We can't go back far enough to fully put the player back here. So I've done a couple of things to finish the golf course. You'll see this little bunker that's just right in front of the tees. Nobody should hit into that bunker. There's no reason to hit into that bunker. Some of you will hit into the bunker. Yeah, I might even hit the bunker. It's one of those things that catches your eye. But it's a directional bunker. It's a classic approach of a little bunker. Donald Ross did thousands of them. You know, just right off the tee. Kind of gives you a little reference of where you want to go over the hill. This is an original depression that used to be on the left side of the fairway. So now the fairway is way out here. So we want to bring that through, add another depression that connects. The cart path would kind of go through it, push the fairway out to the right. So now we've moved the hole a little bit. We're coming in, and then we're going to spice up 18 a little bit. This would feature a double plateau, which is a Seth Rayner, C.B. McDonald's, Donald Ross did them, Langford Moreau did them. And it's a very, very unique green where there's two little terraces with a little crevice in between, back in the back. When the pins are back there, it's just a different ball game. Really a little more precise wedge shot, things like that. But it's, you know, fairly simple work on 18, you know, expand the tee here. And then the last thing is, you know, add a bunker, kind of wrap a bunker around that left side, confine that green, separate one tee and 18. And really create a very dynamic finishing hole on the golf course. But that takes you through the golf course. I think it's a good plan. It enhances what's a great piece of property. It takes all the really strong moments of what's already out there and maintains them and enhances them and expands on it. I think it addresses the weakest moments and tries to do it in a manner that's consistent with the rest of the golf course. And that's my goal. So when I'm finished, so if we get to do this project together, when I'm finished, I don't really want it to look like I did it. I want it to look like it was built in the 20s. It's a great old classic, and a guest, you could bring a guest out here and they would go tell someone they got one of their golf courses 100 years old. It looks like it's never been touched. This thing is just beautiful. It's authentic. And it's just got all the elements of a golf course that was built with horses and mules. And even though we do these things with modern equipment, what we do a little differently is we use like a modern bulldozer. We shape it, and then we go out there and kind of ding it up a little bit with mini X's and shovels, and we give it that horse and mule drawn texture to it. And most people don't know to look at. You'll see it a little more in the afternoon. The wrinkle and things in your fairways. That's the sign of an old golf course. It's got some age to it. It's got some classic character to it. So those are some of the things we'd like to see as a result of implementing this plan. But I think if anybody wants to fire away with a few questions, be glad to take you. The question was maybe to elaborate a little bit on the short game area and how important that is to the club. And it is something that's a very strong trend. Now, we just describe it as a short game area, but it's an amenity that you don't have to be playing 18 holes of golf to use. And really, it gives you a place to work on, the short game. And that's our weakest, really the weakest thing about all of our games is that chipping and putting and close into the green. But to take juniors out there, take the have a place for them to get out and be able to play in a couple different directions, actually play something they feel like is a realistic golf hole early on, to have a space for that, or any level of player to have a clinic, the golf staff to use it for a clinic. I mean, it's just got multiple uses. You can have 5 or 6 players scattered out hitting into that green the way it's oriented. I don't have it up there, but I tried to stretch it out where you could stand in one spot and hit a 30-yard shot, a 40, or 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55.
I got it up there for you.
And run through some, little short wedges. But you can see we can get over here, we can go over the bunker, we can have a clear shot at the green, multiple ways of playing a shot, landing, running through the swell. And the features of the green would replicate out on the golf course as well. But we would level, this would all be raised up. So right now, this whole area is modeled up and overshaped, as we would say. They got a little too excited with the bulldozer and they made it unusable. So we want this entire area around it to be feasible for practice. I mean, right now you can't, like back in here, there's nowhere to chip. It's just, it just drops off kind of down into these bowls and it's rough high grass. But I think it's just got multiple uses for every segment of the club. Come out, got an hour before dark, or you're going to have dinner. I mean, just think about being able to come out here and lob a few wedges, roll a few putts, go in and have a cocktail. Vice versa, if you want to have a little more fun. The cocktails first, then a little chipping and putting. But it's got nice flow. The thing I like, the way this all come together, and I didn't see this coming. It happened in the process of, how do I maximize the value of 8, 9? I recognized there was a weakness with your putting green. I couldn't find it, to be honest with you, the first time I came to the club. I was looking for the putting green. I said, well, that's a chipping green. Where's the putting green? Then, of course, they're the same, one and the same. And you really need dedicated facilities. So when this to me is probably one of the more valuable assets. So, prospective member comes out and they can see that you've got facilities that are easy to access and use right out the door of the clubhouse. And it's right there. But this whole process here opens up beautiful views out across here. There's some tree removal, you got to do right in here. But to be able to stand out there, watch golfers coming in 9, I mean, it's got so many uses.
Why would you not start demolition in the late fall instead of waiting until March?
Well, there's really no reason to with this this is a fairly light approach. Oh, okay. The question was, why would we not start the demolition in the fall instead of waiting for the spring? So the way a project with Bermuda greens unfolds is it's all based on when we plant the greens or when we sprig a fairway, which is going to be early June. So if we can get all the grass planted in early June, then we're going to have the golf course grown in by the end of the summer. As we enter into September, we can play golf again. So depending on the scope of the work, we back up our construction from that, early June. So this is about a 4.5, 5 month construction window. You're going to start to deliver grassable features. So we really don't need to start that far. In fact, we could actually have things finished that are waiting 2 months to be grassed, and they would be exposed to weather. But the winter is probably the least productive time in this region of the country to try to do construction. But we think middle of February, probably 1st of March, when the weather arrives and you can get the work done and get the greens planted, get the fairways. We're not bulldozing the fairways. Other than what we proposed on 8 and 9. Even 7 is just to clean it off and, airify it up and kind of dress it out a little bit. But other than that, the fairways stay the same. We want the wrinkle. We want to look for the bird baths and if there's any, but this golf course drains great. Today's a testament to that. So we don't want to mess with that. We want to keep that character, that rumbling nature of the fairway. So they just get killed. You aerify them, you plant the new grass into them. It grows over them and reestablishes. So that's not a big scope of work to do that. That can happen in the spring. So the work is focused tee boxes, bunkers, greens for the most part. As far as the dirt, exposing the dirt, reshaping, cleaning off and things like that. So it's tees, bunkers, and greens. So there's little pods where we'd be working. Does that answer your question? Yes.
Yeah, I just had a question about 17. To keep a couple trees on the left. Well, which trees are you talking about there?
Some of the pines off to the left that protect, 2 tees down there.
How many do you by some?
I pulled up 17 here.
Well,
There's a big row, but those lower trees, they're going to need to remain in place. I looked at them. There's some shade issues down there, but we need those. Let me orient myself. There's some trees back over here to the left of the path, but the trees I was talking about were down some of these oaks that are down in the corner, kind of past those tees.
I guess the reason I asked that is because I'd say only about 5% of the members can go to that green because it's difficult to get over those trees or,
Yeah, back in here, I think the trees I'm talking about, keeping some of the pines are back to the left, but I'm also sliding the green a little bit right. So I'm trying to get the player away from that shot just a little bit if I can.
the ones by the green, if I'm not getting around. Just the
Down in here
right there.
and probably right in here.
Okay.
There's one right there and there's another one that's planted out. There's some of them are fairly small. They're sort of a medium-sized tree. Yeah. I'll get you next.
So 2 questions. On 17, how about the maintenance of erosion and what's going on down that creek? Is that going to be addressed in the project?
We don't have a definitive plan. We do have placeholder funds. And there's some further discussion about what can be done. I think you mentioned some grant work and things like that. That's a whole bit, different animal to stabilize that creek. That water's, not really your water. It's, it's coming through there. So we are looking at that. That will be addressed.
And then the second part of that, I saw that you had moved some cart paths. So does the project take on just removal of current cart paths, putting in new cart paths, or a combination of improving what's there?
So a little bit of everything. What the plan shows, the black marks are where a path relocates. So we relocate some paths, we repair some paths, And then we, you know, if a path is in good condition, then, you know, it might just get resurfaced. But we would certainly be upgrading the paths throughout the golf courses as needed.
Currently, if you're on 7 tee box, you may have to wait on 14 tee box. And similarly, 6 and 15 tee box. Is there any concern that combining 5 tee box with 16 tee box creates another pace of play issue on the way? And my second question would be on 8 and 9, does that improve the view of the OB line along the course there? The view.
The old E line.
He said the OB.
Yes. Spence line, it's not a great area of the course. Where does this improve that?
Well, the first question was about the pace of play, and pace of play, we see a lot of crossover and combined tees, and yeah, there's issues. You guys are all used to it. You understand how to kind of manage your way through there. So I don't see there's not a lot of options for us to do anything there. I'm used to old golf courses with greens close together, tees, you know, pushed close together, especially as we lengthen them, and they seem to work out. The other question was going up 8, the OB line, the fence, and the old cart path at the bottom of the fence. So we take the cart path away from the fence. We put up, and that's one of the reasons that's a big, large bunker there. So I'm sort of pushing you away, and I'm distracting you from the fence. I don't know who owns the fence, if the club owns the fence, or at some point we need to re-landscape that edge for sure. So it's a little, you know, it's unsightly. I agree with what you're saying. Then at the top of the hill, I don't even know if I've mentioned it. You know, I was going to put a, like what we would call a long strip bunker that separates the top of the hill, but we're moving. Everything I'm doing on that golf hole is moving your eye and your tendency to interact with the out of bounds away from it. And that's one of my goals. Is you can see how much I've expanded. This will be a very broad area up here. Of course, there's a tree standing. It's standing out in the fairway cut, so you can run it right up underneath it. You can find yourself behind it. I mean, there's all sort of different types of interaction, but this is the bunker I talked about, pushing you away from the corner, and it's going to stack up the hill, and it's going to reach out into the golf hole. It's going to bite into that golf hole pretty strong. And then, so the fairway's wide. When it gets up to it, it kind of squeezes down and whips around it. So you're either going over it, or you're playing to a narrow passage between it and the right side of the fairway, or you're laying up short. There's some good options off that tee. Yes, sir.
Two things, and they're both yes or no questions. So you can be quick, but does anybody ever do this front 9 and back 9? Or do they always do them together?
Yes. And they all regretted it, doing it 9 and 9, and I'll tell you why.
No, you don't have.
But if you want,
Second question, I heard tonight that our course is in its 4th quarter, and some of us that are gonna be paying for this are in our 4th quarter. If you put the senior tee boxes up.
they want me to touch on the 9-9, and we are moving some of the senior tees up. But it's not all about distance. I want to touch on this because you raise a good question. We're doing several things to make the shorter hitter have a little more access to, or a little shorter golf course. So I talked a lot about the approaches. I spent a tremendous amount of time on approaches, trying to get them to function better, allow a ball to roll up on the green. There's nothing worse than having a firm green and a soft approach. So to firm them up, soften them up, make them transition better. Whereas today, if you don't carry the front of the green, you're short. You'll be able to land the ball 5, 6, 7 yards short if it's on a low trajectory and bounce it up there. Now, back to the question about doing 9 holes at a time. I get asked that. And I've had a couple of clients, more than a couple of clients, choose that route. Doing 9 holes, close 9 holes, finish them, then come back the next year and close 9 more holes. And before I tell you what they all told me afterwards, as to whether they do that again, what they experienced was 85% revenue loss from closing 9 holes. The members would take the reciprocities and go to the other clubs, play 18 holes. 85% if they'd closed all 18, so they did it twice. So the revenue loss was expounded considerably. So I asked several of them, I said, would you ever do that again? And 100% said no. I would gotten it over with, put it behind us, lessen the disruption, got back on the golf course sooner. So. Any more questions? Yes, sir.
Kind of a perfect storm of things to fix on the course. So is there any concern about doing it all at the same time and having the same effect in another X years of where everything comes all on top of each other again?
How many years would that be?
Well, we really can't say exactly how many years. Maintenance has everything to do with it. We do some things. I'll just touch on the greens. Loss of green space, greens migrating in, losing these great hole locations. One of the things we do when we do a green is we put a wire around the edge of that green that's stubbed up into the drainage system. So every year we recommend that you put a wire locator to it, you paint the edge of the green, and you make sure you maintain that green out, because it's really important from a restoration. If we're going to restore something, we need to maintain the restoration, keep those greens out there. Putting good drainage in bunkers. The one thing we could enhance the bunkers is with a liner system. It prolongs the life. It's a pretty significant capital investment in addition to just bunker renovation. But those are some things that, you know, the USGA says bunkers should be about a 7 to 10 year for replacing sand. Because there's no vegetation exposed to wind and rain and things like that. The liners, the most detrimental thing to a bunker is the mixing of the bunker sand with the soil underneath. It plugs it up, shuts down the drainage, starts to hold water, discolors the sand. So if you can keep that from happening, then you prolong the life of the bunker. The new grasses, obviously putting zoysia on your tees is going to be a major, major improvement to the golf course. That's going to make a very strong impression early on. As soon as you walk out, if any of you get a chance to play at Memphis Country Club, you can almost putt on their tees. There's Xeon zoysia tees with that root zone. So I just use the term root zone. Well, that doesn't mean anything in this room, but a root zone is the same thing that's under green. It's built out of sand and peat moss. It resists compaction. Grass roots deeper. Zoysia resists winter kill. You can cut it closer. It's firmer. It's just got a lot of additional value versus the Bermuda tees that you have today that are, they're just sort of worn out. The soil is compacted. It's not rooted very deeply. So it's susceptible to what happens in the winter, like this winter where we had some damage. So there's little things like that, but you shouldn't look at anything on this golf course for 20, 25, 30 years. In my opinion, with this kind of project. The irrigation systems, these HDP systems are much longer lasting than PVC. There's no joints in it. There's no fittings to leak. It's all fusion weld. It's one pipe that goes around the property, and we just weld it all together. So there's some new technology that's really benefiting the industry that we're talking about in this project.
What would be the new yardage from the back tees?
This plan is right at 7,000, just a hair. I think it's 69.97, but that's middle of green to middle of tee. So you could play the golf course over 7,000 or well under 7,000. But this golf course will hold its own with you can play anything, any kind of event, or you can do anything with it you want. With we've talked a lot about design, but when we talk, we've touched on agronomy and things like that, but having properly built greens, these greens are going to be firmer. They're going to be healthy. They're going to be tighter. If you want to, you're going to be able to withstand drying them down. Let's say you do have the state amateur here and you want this thing to have some teeth to it. You dry them down, you cut them down, you firm them up. It's all any player could ever want. I mean, they just played The PGA Tour just played on one of my golf courses last week. 3 out of 4 days was less than 7,000 yards. One day was 6,900, par 70. They reduced one of par 5s. But because it's got a really well-designed set of greens that makes them think, and it challenges them when they miss and they have the longer putts. I mean, we're almost 7,000 talking about on this plan. I'm not suggesting you have some PGA Tour event. They're not much fun, but you know, for the host club a lot of times, but it's just a point that the golf course is substantial enough to play any kind of golf on it you want. At the same time, be very accommodating to the everyday member. So my plan is always to think about how the ladies and the seniors and the mid-handicapper play the golf course. I don't want to force them beyond their physical abilities. I know what the good players do. They bomb it and they hit it high and they put a lot of spin on it and they attack. So the way we keep them interested and we challenge them is we put that pin closer over to the corner and we make them take on that shoulder that falls off the green. Instead of the pin being 20 feet away, it's 9 feet away or 10 feet away. They miss it a little bit right. Now they're down below the green. They're short shot at themselves. They try to come up over the edge of the green. So it's amazing. It seems simple, but it really makes a big impact on how the golf course is played and perceived. But I'm going to say this. This plan recommends some tree removal. I talked a little bit about a couple little spots, and I didn't go into it in a lot of detail because it's a sensitive subject. But we should be able to stand out and have dinner on the veranda here and see across the property. See the land flowing and see these beautiful oak trees standing out independently in different places and see the corridors in the vistas. That will be magnificent. If you miss a fairway, you shouldn't be punching out. You should be trying to recover toward the green. Recovery play is very important. We want to enhance it, but these pine trees that have been planted inside the original corridors have narrowed the golf course up more than what's necessary now. So they were planted to narrow it, and now they're causing the turf to decline. They're going to get taller. They're going to get wider. That decline is going to get closer and closer to the edge of the fairway, into the fairway. It already is in places. If we don't start to peel these layers back, we're going to end up with a very unsightly golf course. It just has a very thin, rough, a lot of exposed soil. You're seeing that already. So it's telling us, they need to come out. So there's just a great set of old original trees back there that there's some that just amazed me when, that are hidden by those pines, right at 13 left to 14. You all know some of these magnificent specimen trees that are, unfortunately, they're just hidden and cluttered, and I think they deserve their time in the sun.
Cut them all down.
When you've done this tree cutting, like that the country club, what people said that.
Well, I don't think there's ever been a tree program I didn't get resistance to. And sometimes there was a little bit of a delay in getting some approval, or let's try it in a few areas. Almost without exception, if we do it right, the clubs have all said, continue, please continue. That's where did those trees come from? I had one club, they said, where do you get an oak tree that big? Where did that come from? It was directly behind the 10th green at Carolina Golf Club, and you couldn't see it. It's a big white oak. And I took about 27 pine trees out between it and the green and around it, and it's there today, just stands, like this beacon. And I had a couple of people ask me, said, where'd you get that tree from? It's never been there. But there are a lot of examples out here. But Roaring Gap Club is one. Roaring Gap Club was not recognized in any publication in the country whatsoever. Most people didn't even know it was in North Carolina. It's an old Donald Ross. We cut down over 3,000 trees. Now, a lot of them were little small trees, but the white pines had overtaken the golf course. Every historical photograph I had, there was not one pine tree on that mountain. And every golf hole, you couldn't see between the holes, couldn't see back the trees. So we took them out and opened up the vistas, and you could see 50 miles off of some of these greens that you couldn't see off the green. Green sitting on the side of the mountain. I'm like, why don't you cut these trees down? Look at that view. And they begged me, they said, we just, we're concerned about trees. So they allowed me to cut down the trees, and they told me to leave 6 or 7. And I said, you really need to cut down those other 6 or 7 and finish the panoramic view. And they denied me that opportunity. Then lightning struck the trees and knocked them down that summer. So that guy was on my side. But that has actually happened 3 times. So I'm teasing a little bit, but if I really feel strongly about a tree and you don't let me cut it down, put a fence up around it, so nobody stands around during a thunderstorm. But it's happened 3 different times where I said the tree really needs to come. I know you love the old tree, but it's in the wrong place. Like 16 could be that tree to some degree. It doesn't sound like it in the room, but it's, we're careful about it. We don't just go out and mow the trees down. We're careful. We're trying to enhance the golf course, trying to enhance the character. When you look at that old aerial, I mean, there were very few trees out here at all. And we need some trees on the property. We need some shade. We need a place to, pull off, and, a little protection here and there, safety issues. So we're careful in what we take out and what we leave. But I think the deciduous trees are really your tree. They're your native tree that belongs here. The pines have just been overplanted. They're in perfect rows. They're evenly spaced. They're out of place. So, yes.
Deal, but when you're talking about cart paths, it's grading and concrete. And if you have to change some of them because of the plans you've already had in place for fairways and greens, could there be alternate material used, chat, gravel, something like that, as opposed to pouring cart paths all at one time?
The question was about, the different options for cart paths. Now, I'll tell you, I'm not a fan of cart paths. I wish we didn't have to have them. I have a lot of golf courses that don't have them. We discussed whether or not we have to have continuous cart paths. We came to the conclusion we probably do. Your cart paths are deteriorated. And the way a project is going to be pretty hard on the cart paths. There's a lot of repetitive hauling of heavy materials and dump trailers and things like that. So as you work out of a project like this, you bring the cart path repairs behind you so they're not impacted, by the project. As far as alternative materials, we've tried different options. Kafka, there's a company that will actually till these cart paths, till them and mix them with a Portland cement mixture with the native soil and try to create a natural path. The problem becomes erosion. If there's water running across them, they tend to rut them. We haven't gotten there yet. We haven't been able to find a good alternative, especially on undulating ground like this. If the golf course was flat, we'd have more options available. But the cart paths, you could finish the project and delay the cart paths. You could come back and certainly do those later. They're not dependent. The ones that need to move would need to move because there's features, need to go in different places. But But they're, I just wish we would just eliminate them altogether. The architects, we don't like them. They're sort of intrusive, and we just want to see the pretty stuff. So, but anyway, that's a good point. To sit out, is that what you were looking for? Or?
It be done at a later date as opposed to everything being done right now.
Yeah, here's the way it works. Whatever causes the golf course to close needs to be done at the same time, without question. Anything that's going to cause a major disruption to the club's operating revenue needs to be done. So doing the greens, you have to close the golf course. There's no choice, whether you just renovate them or you rebuild them or you do what we're talking about, which is a little of both. So while you're doing that, your tees are another element that would close the golf course or take you off that. So now we've got greens and tees. Well, doing bunkers out in front of golfers is a difficult thing. It is done. It's dangerous. You have to close holes, move tees up, all those kind of things. So those are the three key elements of this project as far as architectural work. The thing that Rusty talked a little bit about irrigation. You always want to design irrigation around the golf, not the other way around. They got this irrigation system, so anything that's going to move needs to be in place when that irrigation system is designed and installed. So you can see how these things work together. So the things that probably have some delayability are some of the tree work, some of the underbrushing, things like that, but they're a fairly small component of it, in my opinion. But the main infrastructure of this golf course is the meat and bones is those tees, fairways, bunkers, greens, irrigation.
Just as it relates to process tonight. So I'm going to have a few slides when we're done asking questions of Kris, and they're going to talk a little bit about project financing options. But for the process tonight, what we're doing is and as far as voting, we're going to have the ability to vote tonight and over the next 2 weeks on this master plan. And that's separate from potentially how it gets implemented or how it gets paid for and what the timing of that is. So right now, these are more, these questions are a little bit more related to the plan that's in front of us and the plan that's being presented by Kris, and then how that can be implemented over time, how we can pay for it, all of that as a board, we believe that we needed to present what we thought was a feasible option for that. So we're going to touch on that when he's done, but that's not necessarily what has to be voted on tonight. And so your question is all or nothing. The vote is as it relates to this plan. Implementation and paying for it is a little bit separate, but we're still going to talk about it. But the vote. Well, that's the thing. So, well, I think what we've got is a very good project plan that we thought through a lot, and that there's been a lot of discussions around, and last night's meeting had to do with as well. And I'm going to go through those slides, and I think it's a great plan. I hope the membership agrees. But as it relates to the questions for Kris and this master plan, things could be tweaked as it relates to how it's paid for and how it's ultimately completed and put in, assuming the master plan passes. But you'll see both tonight. But the vote is more specific related to the master plan being presented. Rusty, am I saying any of that incorrectly, or do you want to clarify? Good.
You did a good job. Get my hand.
Just quickly in closing, thank you for your time. I know this is a lot of information, and I know it's a lot to take in, but you've been very patient. Great questions, and I appreciate your time and Excited at the possibilities of being able to work with you on your great golf course, make it even greater going forward. So thank you.
There looked like there was some more back there. Anybody else have a question? Oh,
Where we can email or text in additional comments or questions.
All the next presentations will be emailed out.
Yeah.
Monster, your review, then got 2 weeks, or whatever. Yeah, what the board's gonna be over
On those, if I said there are recommendation, questions, they're gonna be shared with everybody. In other words, if I say, we don't need to take that tree out of 7 feet or whatever, you know.
Yeah. let me address that. This has been worked through a very lengthy process. And to be very candid with you, David, that the concern was if we started that path, it would unravel. In other words, let's leave this tree and then, let's do this over here. So tonight, we would ask that while we understand there will be people who individually will look at it and say, I wish we would do that, I wish we would do that. We need an up or down vote on this plan. We've given this a lot of thought, a lot of discussion, talked to other clubs. So I understand there are going to be places individually where you'd like to change this or that. But we understand that once we open that door, start unraveling, pull that thread, I don't know, we think it becomes basically unworkable, with all respect to that. Yes.
So I understand correctly, tonight, you want us to vote whether to accept this plan or not,
Exactly.
but we don't know how much it's gonna cost.
Yeah, what we're gonna get, we're not done yet.
Well,
We have more to present.
but I understand that, but you said to not,
No,
Oh,
no.
we're only voting on the plan, right?
We're voting on the plan. But the vote, if you feel you've gotten enough information, and again, Patrick's got some more stuff to present. We're not done with information we think is relevant and useful to you. I told you a little bit about this alternate path, which again is open to everyone. That is the $100,000. And it's going to be presented, but when he finishes, it's open to everyone in this room.
Let's hear that.
Okay.
We need to hear it.
All right. Forget it.
I do have a question.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
The design,
I'll get them.
was it ever considered not to change the holes? And if so, why was that? Like, why was that not?
So here,
You like it, don't get me wrong.
you're going to see some more details on the difference of the cost of absolutely replacing the golf course assets exactly as it is versus the tweaks that have been recommended here. But the board and Brandon, I mean, I think you said it best last night, so I'm just going to repeat what Brandon has said here. When we met with Kris, we met with multiple architects, and Kris impressed this board the most. But when we met with him, we gave zero design input to Kris. What we said was, go out there and look at this piece of property. We've got some big things that we need to plan for. And we don't know if we need to change a single thing. But come back to us and let us know what you think. I mean, nobody on this board is an architect. We asked him to come back and let us know what he thinks. He's the professional architect. And what he came back with was basically what you just saw, which I would summarize as, I love this golf course. You can change 2 holes and really take out the 2 problem areas and significantly enhance the practice facilities, et cetera. So the difference in those 2 modifications to the overall cost is less than 10% of the total cost of the project.
To address that, it's about $40,000 to $45,000 per hole with all the equipment out here. That's the best estimate. Is that accurate, Kris? For the 8 and 9, for the 2 greens, while the equipment's here. So that actually from a, you know, percentage standpoint, doesn't add much at all to the overall cost because they're already out here and they can reshape and do all the things because they're already here. Is that correct, Chris?
Okay. I think if it's related to money, we ought to go through the slides. Go ahead. That's your all's choice, all right? So as it relates to voting on the plan, you're voting to approve a plan that we will work towards implementing as the project financing is in place and we're in a position to do it. So voting on the plan is different and it's a little bit separated from the money, but because of these questions, we knew that we could not make that presentation and stop, right? So what we've done is we basically said, and you can go on to the next slide. What we've done is we said, look, we have to have something here that puts toward the membership. How can we get this done? And what you have to remember is we've got $4 million worth of cost to plan for, and that we will have to just start assessing for and planning for with or without any of the things that Kris just presented. Okay, so just going through a couple of these slides. Most of this cost is with or without any of the architectural changes. If you add in the changes that Kris has presented here, you're adding about $700,000 to the overall cost of the project. Okay, so that's all of them. That's not just 8 and 9. That's every change that has been considered. So it takes the cost that we need to plan for over the next 3 to 5 years from $13,000 per golfing member to a little more than $15,000 per golfing member. Now, what we have wanted to do here is to say, okay, how can we do this in a way that is manageable for each membership class, for each person in each stage of their life? You know, I mean, we've had a lot of feedback from seniors and people that aren't, you know, lifetime Jacksonians, all that type of thing. And the key thing to remember here is that these things will have to shut down the golf course for some period of time with or without this master plan. So that can't really be avoided. But the incremental cost is about $50, $60 a month over that period of time, over a 3-year period. So here's our goal, and this is what we sat down to accomplish. And we've talked through a dozen different ways to do it. And what we're presenting tonight is a plan that I think and the board supports is one that will work. Every one that we talked about had pros and cons. So there will be cons, and if there's questions on the cons, I'll be happy to address them to the best of my ability. But our goals were this. We wanted to be fair to every membership class. We wanted to provide flexibility to those that would need to pay over time, and that includes the younger membership classes, which we've got a very healthy membership now here. I mean, 7 or 8 years ago when I joined this club, it was not as many young families as it is today. And I think that's awesome. And we certainly don't want to put forward a plan that does anything to upset that. You know, we wanted to have that flexibility. We wanted to have the cost and the benefits appropriate for each type of membership. We wanted to minimize the membership reduction. We're basically 15 members away from a full membership right now. So this is a point in time where we have the ability to actually to put forward a plan like this to make sure that we're in position to take care and maintain the status and the prestige of Jackson Country Club. And then the last one, which is the specifics of this plan, is there a way to pay for up to 50% of the project with less than 5% of the membership? And those two numbers were kind of a guiding rule of thumb. And, you know, maybe some of it's a little bit art and science, but as a general rule, what we felt was if you can get enough support from less than 5% of your membership, then the benefits that you provide to that 5% could be essentially covered by the rest of the membership without being unduly burdensome. Okay, so that was a little bit of a guiding feature. So what we have here is 2 significant capital contribution classes that we polled the board, and we worked through a lot of different features on these things. And I'll tell you this, we would not be standing up here in front of any members unless the board raised their hand and multiple members from the board said, that would be something I would be interested in supporting. So the first focus group that we had was ourselves, and we said, would anybody on the board do this? And so what these two are, and I'm going to start with the bottom one. I probably should have had this flipped on the slide, but you've got what we're calling a founders club. And it's basically looking for 20 members to contribute $100,000 to the project. That raises $2 million. There's benefits as it relates to dues and non-variable cost. None of the benefits would include things like food and drinks and things like that, for example. But the benefits basically add up to $100,000 over time with essentially flat dues. Okay, so to the club, it's not to the person that signs up for this. It's not charity because you're getting the benefit back over time, but it is generosity, and you're doing it because I'm sure there's better ways to invest your money. This isn't an investment vehicle that I want 100 hands to raise in here, because we can't. The dues loss would be too great if we had that many members raise their hand. But it is something that we're looking for 20 people to commit to help ensure the future in the next 30 years of Jackson Country Club. So it's a 10-year benefit, and it can be transferred. So say, like I said, you're not a Jacksonian. I'm not a lifelong Jacksonian, but I am interested in this Founders Club plan. And if my job relocated me out, I could transfer that Founders Club membership to somebody else, and they could pay me for the remaining life on that plan. The other one is the lifetime legacy, and potentially 4 members contributing $250,000, and having benefits a lot that would come along with that, along with recognition for a pretty considerable and outstanding level of support of golf in Jackson, Tennessee. And it's essentially a 100-year membership to the club. Can be transferred a maximum of 2 times. So those two, if we're able to, in the meeting that we had last night, as Rusty said, it was not meant to be a limiting factor. If anybody raises their hand tonight, comes up to me after this is done and says, hey, I wasn't at it last night, but I'm interested in this, there is maximum flexibility in this regard. And if you say, hey, well, wait a minute, what if it's 30 and we lose too many dues? There's a lot of ways that we can make this work. So there's maximum flexibility here. But suffice it to say, last night we had a strong enough show of support for this concept to feel pretty confident that we can raise $3 million of the cost of this project through 24 members. Go ahead. I'll come back to that for questions when I'm done. So then you've got $3 million raised, and then you can raise another $3 million via assessments of the membership. And what we've got is the golf members would be an $8,000 assessment. If you pay it up front, it's $8,000. If you pay it over 3 years or over the life that is allotted, it's a 5% total penalty. So it's $8,400 if you pay it over time. So the reason for that is if we get $3 million from 24 members, we want to provide some incentive to people to go ahead and cut the check so that we've got the funds in place when we say go on this project. So you've got the full members, and the junior members are $8,000. You also have $6,000 on 2 of the classes of the national memberships. Senior golfers would have a $4,000 assessment, along with the furthest class of the national membership. That would be $4,000, and then non-golf members with a total of $5,000 assessment. That is what is being proposed tonight. And what's part of this is $500,000 of the overall funds being raised, and that adds up to $6 million. $500,000 at a minimum, not at a maximum, at a minimum, being reserved to do things that enhance the clubhouse and the 9 golf facilities. So, you'll see a slide here in a minute, but making it more family friendly downstairs, doing things that can improve the facility here and make it appropriate for the level that we have of a golf course out there. So just a couple slides on the clubhouse. What you see here is an upstairs renovation. So that is on this side, wrapping around, and the windows that you see are the ones that face out towards 1 green or 1T and 18 green. But opening up that bar, opening up the points of view, this is a very, very inexpensive part of that, and it's something that the board was actually already in the process of working on. But this just shows some of the things that we're talking about to improve the clubhouse facilities as well, because that and all the details of that are not worked out. But what we are saying is that the clubhouse would be improved and enhanced with this project as well. Just a quick waterfall chart that shows, how we can raise $6 million for this project. We're accounting for in the plan a pretty conservative drop in total members. Much more than any of the kind of case studies, regionally similar sized markets that we've looked at. And in those, the assessments was much larger than the 8, 6, and 4 that we're talking about here. So, what we've basically done is we've taken what would have been a $15,000 assessment, and we've essentially cut it in half. We believe that the dues impact to that is basically a wash, because we believe that if you would have charged $15,000 a head, that 20 to 25 more members would have potentially opted not to stay. So we believe that the dues impact is essentially a wash, and we're saving the members that are not necessarily in a position to contribute all of the kind of next 10-year funds up front. We're saving them considerably on the front end of that. You might be saying, well, why the hell are you raising $6 million? It's up, like you said, it's $4.7 million. If we raise $6 million, we've got plenty of additional contingency for any revenue loss during the 6 months that the project is ongoing. And we're in a position to be able to look at our membership roll when the project is done and say exactly where are we today. One thing that I left out is, new members coming in, obviously. What is the demand for new membership? The initiation fee would at a minimum be $15,000 to come into the club post-project completion. And you would be in a position to say where exactly do we need dues income to be to make sure that we're maintaining the golf course on a go-forward basis. We didn't have to take on 1 penny of incremental interest-paying debt to complete it. That is the plan. And I will pause there. Go to the next slide real quick. I think it's appendix. Yeah, I'll pause there for any questions on the pros or cons of the proposed plan.
What's the membership mix right now?
Yeah, so there's 585 total members, and